welcome back to my channel. I'm Michael. I am a old faggot, retired chef, author, and barber. As you can see from the lack of hair, I am clearly a barber, right? Anyway, welcome back to my channel, and today I want to discuss applesauce. Why not? Applesauce sounds great, right? I would like to say I grew up eating applesauce and grew up having my mom make it for me when I was a child, but that would be a lie because, well, she never did. Which is fine. I have no real issue about it whatsoever. But, it's one of those things that even though we didn't have applesauce, like real applesauce, like applesauce that came from a jar, that came from a grocery store, that kind of applesauce, we did have something like applesauce, but not exactly the same thing. I remember we had in our kitchen this strange little gadget that was about that big. About, what is that, 6 inches by 4 inches or so. It was a flat plate and it had 2 rims on either side you can hold on to, and in the center of the plate it had a bunch of little like pointy spots, like little mounds, sort of like that fourth side of a cheese grater. The ones that are like rectangular, and you've got regular, and you've got one that slices, and then you've got one that's like bumpy and rough and has holes on the tops of the bumps, and you can I don't know exactly what one does with that, but it was sort of like that, except it was not sharp and it did not have any holes in it. It was sort of like a safety grater for making apple mush, for a lack of better term. So you would grate the apple on top of it. You'd hold the apple and just do this back and forth. And it was really good for bruising an apple, but grating, not so much. Making a sauce out of it, no. It just kind of turned it into like an oxidized brown, mushy, liquidy, bruised apple stuff. I don't really know how really to describe it other than that. And we would consume that instead of real applesauce. So instead of applesauce, I had apple mush. If I wanted raw apple, I would have eaten an apple. So because I didn't grow up eating it, it's not something that I thought about very often when I was cooking or working in restaurants or creating dishes, because it wasn't something I ever thought about as a comforting food. The only time I really ate applesauce as a kid and growing up was when my mother would prepare pork chops with sauerkraut and applesauce. The only reason sauerkraut and the applesauce existed, in my opinion, was to give the pork chop some flavor and some moisture. Anyone growing up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, probably even 50s, remembers trichinosis and the terror of eating uncooked pork. So everyone was concerned about pork not being cooked all the way, so they cooked it to the point where it was like dust. It was like dry, so dry. Ugh. And the only thing you really do to give it any flavor and moisture was put stuff on it. So applesauce and sauerkraut. So I really never liked pork or pork chops. So I never really equated applesauce as a tasty thing because it was always with pork. So yeah, I kind of just never really thought much about it. I will say though, when I was a teenager, I would constantly want to go out with my friends, and we would go hang out in some divey 24-hour restaurant or whatever, and we'd sit in a Naugahyde booth, and we would drink really bad coffee and chain smoke cigarettes for hours, and we would just be like pseudo intellectual, you know, try to be all like witty and clever and funny and intelligent, and it was just really, really absurd. It's what 16-year-olds used to do. I don't know if they still do it. I doubt it. The coffee at these places was so hyper caffeinated because it sat in a big urn for hours, basically evaporating the water out of it, leaving nothing more than like a coffee sludge that was just ridiculously caffeinated. So that's what I always looked forward to when I was a teenager. We always wanted to go do that, and my parents were always like, why don't you just stay home and have your friends come over? We can make some coffee here and you can just sit around the kitchen. It's a lot cheaper. The horror of the idea of my friends coming over to my house to drink coffee was utterly unacceptable. Just not going to happen. Not going to happen at all. Basically, it was saying, why go spend money when you can just stay home and be super cheap and drink coffee with your friends here? Is basically the same thing of saying, why go buy applesauce when you can just have a gadget and get raw apples that are less expensive and grate them into some form of mush, but not actually applesauce? Why would I want to do that whatsoever? So yeah, applesauce was never really a high point in my life, as I've kind of pointed out already. But the ironic thing about it is that when I did start finally making applesauce was when I was working at the last restaurant I ever worked at. I created the sandwich, which was a really popular but extremely messy, hot and time-consuming hell nightmare. A very wet, messy, personal nightmare, because everyone liked it, so everyone ordered it, which I really wish it was one of those things that I really wish I had never come up with, because I hated making it so much. But what it was Bavarian style braised pork shoulder, fried cabbage that was fried in bacon fat, and homemade applesauce. And it came on rye bread, and it came with a side of like a horseradish aioli mayo dip, whatever you want to consider it. All of it was made at the restaurant. Basically, I was making pork chops, sauerkraut, and applesauce. Basically, I was making the thing that I hated as a child. Pork shoulder, fried cabbage, applesauce. No difference. And I hated it even then because it was frustrating and time consuming. But, you know, it was my own fault for coming up with it and seeing if people would buy it and discovering they would. Yeah, so applesauce, not my thing. Oddly, unfortunately, I like it. I like eating it, but it just has zero enjoyable memories to me whatsoever. So there's no comfort in it whatsoever. I think that at the end of the day, it's obviously something I can live without, because, like I said, it's something I've never really paid much attention to or considered or thought about, because it's not something I grew up with, which is fine. And regardless of all this, I'm still including it in my newest cookbook that I am writing currently, because it is something that people may want to know how to make. And there are recipes in the book that actually require it. So I might as well give the recipe out. It's ridiculously simple. It's apples cooked down with some sugar. That's it. You can jazz them up, I guess, if you want to, by adding stuff like sour dried cherries or cranberries or apple brandy, or you can use pears instead of apples. You can use some quince along with the apple. You can do also pretty much whatever you want, but the end of the day is it's a super easy recipe, and it'll be in the book. So that's exciting. Have a great day, and hopefully I'll talk to you soon and share something new with you about food or my life or being queer or something I hate or something I loathe or something I love or my books or music or whatever. And bye. It's amazing how many people I know in the service industry are misanthropes. Maybe we're misanthropes because we've been working in the service industry. We deal with people at their greediest and neediest. It's no wonder that we have no respect for most humans, let alone want to be around people, unless we're getting paid to be around people. So I had a weird interaction the other day with a client while I was washing her hair. She started getting all biblical, talking about how God loves us and blah, 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 and, you know, damnation and shit like that. And it got me thinking, wasn't hell created for Satan, not humans who are prone for making mistakes and free will? And if ours is a loving God, why would he use threats, manipulation, that if we don't love him back, we are sent to hell? That's not what a loving person would do. That's what a narcissist would do. Threatening people to follow them? That's bullshit. When I was 16, before I came out to my parents, I came out to a girl who was trying to get me to date her at the time. She wasn't my type at all. Her personality was very aggressive, and I was not attracted to her body type at all. And that's just the way it was. But she was persistent. So I finally decided I'm going to tell her that I'm bisexual because that'll keep her from bothering me about it. It didn't. Unfortunately, she kept on thinking to herself, well, if he's bi, at least maybe I have a chance. With that not working, I finally decided I'm just going to come out and tell her I'm gay, because that should stop it. And it did. It took a little while, but it stopped it. She was convinced I was lying. But now I am questioning myself. Is my entire life based on a lie? I don't know. It's way too early in the morning. Really, way too early. But I'm getting on a train. First time ever. Normally I say hot, fiery ball, fiery destruction when I get on a plane. I don't exactly know how to describe what happens. Hopefully if the train doesn't derail, I'll be fine. And I'll get to Portland without dying. That'd be nice. But, I think I'm a pretty good person. I fuck up here and there, but I think I'm pretty good. So, why do I have fucking Lizzo stuck in my head? Do I deserve this punishment? I really don't think so. But somebody needs to please make it stop, because she's horrible. Like, it's horrible. Anyway, just thought I'd share that. Yay, Lizzo at 6 in the morning. Yay. Okay, Pete Shelley, we know you had a little career after the Buzzcocks, but let's clear this up. It's not Homo sapien. It's homosexual. I mean, I'm thrilled that you got close to it, but you really never got to the point. Recently, not really noticing, but I'm just coming to be aware exactly how much product people are putting out on their Just for Fans page. Like, where do they find time to film all this shit? I mean, honestly, do they have jobs? Because it seems that some of these guys have video to put up every day, almost. I don't get it. I mean, how is it that that's happening? What are they doing? Are they paying people? I'm confused. Is that seriously like their only form of income? I seriously don't understand how it works that way. It's 9:45 in the morning and I am waiting for my mother to show up. This is going to be fun. My sister and I are meeting up and kind of ganging up on her for a not fun conversation, which is going to basically be tell her that we think it's time for her to stop driving. She's 81 and she terrifies me when she drives. She's unsure of herself, so it's literally brake, go, brake, go, brake, go, brake, go, brake, go. It's not only nauseating, but terrifying. And I can only imagine what cars driving past her might be concerned about, because it's not good. She also can't really drive at night these days, and she just seems unsure about where she's going, even though she's lived here for 20 years now. It's bad. So this coffee shop across the street, it's like a little walk by. It's tiny, like 10 by 4, small. Used to be a babes in bikinis baristing coffee. Changed. It is now, starting today, hot boys serving hot coffee, and they're all shirtless and they're wearing skimpy little shorts, and I'm just delighted. Seattle's becoming a little too white and a little too straight, so having something like that on the middle of Broadway is kind of a delight to me. So yeah, I'm curious to see if it lasts and how long it lasts, and if it does last, what kind of crowd it draws. So yeah, shirtless boys making coffee across the street almost makes me want to start drinking coffee again. I wonder if the boys are gay. The things that drives people crazy, people who complain. That's what I like to do sometimes. One of the things I find most interesting is that you get older, you have more to complain about. I think this has to do with the fact that you've spent more time on Earth, so you've experienced more, and it's just something you want to do. It's a good way to release a lot of problems and just kind of release energy and try to work things out, drive your friends crazy, make yourself lonely because no one will hang out with you, separate yourself from your friends and family. But there's the art of being a curmudgeon, and I think that's something that should be definitely looked into by me. I have a lot of things I can complain about. I can always find something to complain about. That's not the problem. The problem is, how do you complain about something but make it worthwhile? How do you make being a curmudgeon humorous? And how do you make other people interested in watching you talk about bullshit that really has no effect on anything, but you're just complaining? I would assume this would be pretty easy to do. We shall see. I have been trying to figure out for years what I could potentially do for a YouTube page. I have noticed over the past year with COVID that
There's a lot of content in YouTube and Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and every other thing that is out there that you can use as a media platform for exposure. I've spent a lot of time watching these YouTube videos and these people who have millions of followers and blah, blah, blah. And I'm trying to figure out what is it that they do that makes them so popular. Well, they have something to give, something specific. And they do it, and it's great. So I think to myself, okay, self, what do you have that you can give society, or at least people who are watching you? What can you give to them that will at least make them entertained? Because people want to be entertained. And the only thing I could really think of was I could talk about food, but you can find millions of things about that. I thought about reading chapters from my books, but no one wants to listen to a person read a book. Honestly, no one wants to. I could record me cutting people's hair, but there's already hundreds of YouTube videos or whatnot that focus nothing on anything other than hair, be it coloring or cutting or home doing, whatever. So obviously those three options are completely out of question. They're just not going to happen. I've been watching a lot of reaction videos, and one of the things that I've enjoyed as I've gotten older is allowing myself to actually experience emotions other than just laughing. And watching reaction videos of a person reacting to something, usually it's a song, and I'm like a voyeur watching them who are being exhibitionists reacting to something that was created specifically to give a person a feeling or an emotion. It's frustrating because the videos that people are always talking about, I've seen 100,000 times now. Pentatonics, Disturbed, Johnny Cash. Those are the three that everyone keeps on talking about. And I've seen them hundreds of times. I get the same emotional experience every time I see it, but it's not like I can sit there and say, this is the first time I've ever watched this. I know nothing about this artist. I'm 50 years old. I'm gay. I've been listening to music for a long time. So obviously that would be a lie. Oh, I did think about talking about being an older gay male and just how not obnoxious, but how challenging it was growing up. There's the frustrations I see in how the younger generations are so much more relaxed at coming out. And that might be something I would do to a degree. But I'm always concerned that it turns into a situation where it's like, it was really hard for me, and because it was hard for me and I had to do it, you have to do it the same way. Instead of, it was really hard for me and I want to make sure that you don't have to go through that because it was rough. I can talk about my time in the leather community. It is a topic of things that happened. So I'm not really sure. Earlier, before the plague, I had joined Instagram and I decided what I wanted to do was post nothing but vlogs of me talking about something random that lasted only a minute. And they have nothing to do with each other. Usually they're not necessarily witty, but they're stupid. And sometimes they're funny. But for the most part, it's my observations of things. And people seem to enjoy it. And I certainly enjoyed it. But once COVID hit, everything just kind of stopped and came to a standstill. I was just looking around. I'm like, I have nothing to talk about now. Nobody's doing anything. I can't really go anywhere. So all I do is stay at home and write on my keyboard for my books, or I'm at work cutting hair, or I'm sleeping, or I'm stressing out watching the news, which I've finally had to admit I have to stop doing that because I was getting panic attacks while I was going to bed, and in the middle of the night, I would wake up in a panic. So I don't watch the news anymore. I just can't. Even with what's happened now, I can't. And I do not want to get into politics at all. I want to avoid that like the plague because I have viewpoints that people disagree with. I have viewpoints people will agree with. I'll have opinions that people want to argue about. I don't want to deal with it. Number one rule, should this page turn out into being some kind of thing, no politics. I will not respond to anything regarding politics. That is not why people are going to want to watch me. There's plenty of places they can go to find out the information they want to hear. I am not an echo chamber. And the one thing I have discovered that is true across the board, that if you have reason arguing against emotion, no one ever wins an argument anyway. Arguments, you don't win arguments. You can win a debate as far as like how well you debate, but that doesn't mean you win as in that you're able to change somebody else's mind. When you put somebody who's emotional about something and you pit them against somebody who's using reason and logic against them, the emotional person will never change. If anything, the reason and logic is just going to make the emotional person even more dug into their beliefs, because what is happening is they are afraid because they're trying to be shown change of some sort, and they don't want to do that. They're happy the way they are, they're happy the way they think, and they're happy with the way they want the world to be. And a person who's being reasonable and trying to use logic isn't going to change their views because they're using reason and logic, and they're avoiding using emotion as much as possible. You can't argue something by I feel or I just believe this is the way. That's not valid. So no politics, just none whatsoever. So no food, no book reading, no like filming of me cutting or dyeing hair, coloring hair, no like reaction videos. Instead of no, 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 I just turn it into a yes to all of them. So you never know what you're going to get. One day, one post might be about me just bitching about people who chew their food when you can hear them chewing their food and how much it drives me completely batshit. And then the next day, I could be talking about how it seems like everyone who sits in my chair, they all want the same haircut. Every guy pretty much wants the same haircut, which is kind of cool because you can take a picture of each person with the same haircut and you get a completely different appearance. So maybe I'll do that occasionally. Maybe I'll teach you guys how to make ambrosia, because who doesn't love ambrosia? Maybe I will talk about things that I'm working on, creative things that I'm dealing with. Maybe I will talk about growing up and being an older gay male and being somewhat of a curmudgeon and complaining about the crap that no one else really wants to hear about, but I can do it and spin it in a way that's kind of funny. I can talk about music. I can talk a lot about music, but I have very strong opinions about styles and types and artists, so I probably would get a lot of negative feedback from people regarding the artists that I enjoy listening to versus the artists as being a gay male I'm supposed to enjoy. Because every gay male is supposed to love these artists. And by artists, I mean people who are talented and singing for money. Pop artists. So let's see what happens. And let's start posting. And let me tell you right now, it's going to be ghetto because you get to see this should you want to follow me. Until it maybe, if this starts getting me any kind of feedback or any kind of movement to where I should consider purchasing equipment, then I might. Like, for example, I have these lights. I don't know how to use them. I plug them in and they're super bright. I don't know where I'm supposed to put them. They're really, really bright, and they just make my face glow. But apparently they're used for video, but I don't know. I've got 2 of them. So, I don't know. And I got a new phone that's got one of those really amazing video cameras on it. We shall see. Anyway, any input about this would be awesome. So, with that note, have a good day and get off my goddamn lawn, you kids.